Hey guys, I got a nice story that might perk your interest. When I was in grade 9, I went to school in Hong Kong. For our annual trip, we went over to Thailand to some rural little campground with dorms. Every year, my school went to this particular camp because it was conveniently located for the activities that the school annually planned. However, those students in higher grades always said that the dorm 4D was haunted. As luck would have it, I was assigned to dorm 4D with 7 other classmates. When we arrived on the first day, everything was pretty fine. We did some hiking, rock climbing, your standard outdoor camp activities. During our free time period, I was pretty worn out. I'm not much of a physically active person, so I decided to head back to my dorm and finish off my Harry Potter books, when suddenly, in the corner of my eye, I could swear that I saw someone peering through the window of the dorm. As soon as I glanced up, though, the figure vanished. However, the shrubs just outside the window were still slightly rustling, almost like who or whatever it was had just taken off. I disregarded it as someone who was just being overly curious, so I continued reading my books. After us kids had dinner, we all headed back to our dorms and started fooling around. We were sitting in the common area, playing cards and all. It was getting rather late, I'd say around 11 p.m. by now, so it was past curfew time. Teachers were going around to check that people were in their dorms, and it was lights out at 12 a.m. As we were playing cards, all of us thought that we could hear someone faintly humming, a high-pitched voice, like a kid's voice, coming from the bathroom. If you've ever tried talking aloud in a bathroom, you'll know that your voice sort of echoes. Well, the humming had that kind of effect, so we thought that it was coming from the bathroom. I went to check the bathroom, but there was nothing there. As soon as I came within, say, 15 feet of the door, the voice stopped. Freaky, I thought. But as we were all in a big group of 8, we weren't all that worried. So after lights out, we were all pretty much burnt out. We decided to turn in, and this is when things really started to go down. It was going on to about 12:45 when I heard a startled yell coming from the other bedroom. I rushed out to the door with Andrew, my bunkmate, and we bumped into all the other guys in the dorm. They were all peeping out of their rooms at the same time. The guys in room 2 were looking really panicked. We asked them what was wrong, and Steve, one of the dudes, said that he saw a figure in a long red gown walk briskly past the open doorway as he was lying there in the dark trying to go to sleep. Obviously, we found no such figure in the room. Now, Steve was a big, athletic guy, around 6'2" at the time of the incident. He was always the hard ass when it came to sports, and really outgoing. It was pretty freaky for him to be the one getting scared like that, so we were all pretty unsettled. Coming around 2 a.m., we were all suddenly startled again, and once more ran out and met in the common area. It seemed like there was maniacal laughter coming from the corridor outside, and there was a clanging too, like someone holding something metallic and banging it against the walls. The noise seemed to be coming closer to our door, louder and louder, until it suddenly stopped. By this time, we were ready to bail and pretty scared. We all decided to pull up our bedsheets, clear the living area, and the camp as a whole group in the middle of the dorm. It wasn't until 4 a.m. that the weird things went down again. We all had pretty much passed out by this point, but we were awoken by a strange thumping sound that seemed to come from the roof. It was almost as if someone was walking on the roof, because the thumps went from above my room to above the second room, and down to the third and then the fourth rooms. We decided to head outside to see if there was anything on the roof. Grabbing our flashlights and phones, we went out as a group. First, we checked the roof. Nothing. We went around to check if there was anything that could leap up to the roof that someone could climb. We found a large drain pipe that was running alongside the window where I thought I saw the figure. However, it didn't really have enough foothold for anyone to climb. I did notice something strange though. The window where I thought I saw the figure was really dirty. There was also a strange set of 5 lines, almost as if someone had dragged their hand down the window, displacing some of the dirt. Also, the drain pipe had caused the ground around the window to become fairly damp and muddy. Anyone who had been there would have left prints or marks of some sort. I did not see any prints other than my own, which struck me as strange. We decided to head back to our room and tell the teachers about it when we next saw them. However, when we got there, we saw the most freaky thing of all. All of our bed sheets that we had removed and gathered in the middle of the room had been pulled towards the bathroom. It seemed as if they had been pulled halfway through the bathroom door. Then the door had been closed on the sheets, leaving them caught in the door. Freaked out beyond belief by this point, we decided to take overnight shifts between the 8 of us, as we had to burn more hours until 8 a.m. when we could head out for breakfast. This we did, and for the rest of the night, things seemed fine. The next day, we met the teachers in the cafeteria, and we told them of what happened the night before. The teachers listened patiently, understanding from the seriousness of our faces that we were not kidding around. One of the teachers, Mr. Benton, said that he heard faint banging and stomping sounds coming from the direction of our dorm. Another, Mrs. Westwood, said that she thought several times in the night that a figure was walking outside her window. It was agreed that we would all move to a different location, and later on that day, we boarded a bus to go to a different campsite. Before leaving, Steve and I went to talk to the caretaker of the campground and asked him about the peculiar events. What he told us freaked us out big time. He said that one day, a little girl had been playing around, and she saw the big drain pipe leading up to the roof. She climbed the drain pipe and got up on the roof. The roof, however, was slanted and wet from the rain and humidity. She slipped, fell, and broke her neck, landing right outside the window where I thought I saw the figure. Her mother, one of the maintenance staff at the time, was so distressed that she went near insane, locking herself in the bathroom and humming incoherently for a whole day. Then, around 3 a.m. the same night, she ran, laughing hysterically throughout the corridor, climbed to the roof up the same pipe, and jumped, killing herself in the process. That's the first and hopefully last time I go to Thailand. My father was somewhat a skeptic in the paranormal. However, one of the few stories my dad would share about his childhood, this one was pretty in-depth. He was born in Cambodia, and around 14 is when he experienced what a war is like. The Khmer Rouge, as described by my grandmother and parents, were ruthless. Often, families would get separated, and because of that, my father's parents knew they had to get my father far from what was going to happen. As they were rudely awakened by Khmer Rouge trying to get into the house, my father could hear his parents constantly shouting at him to run so that he wouldn't have to see what was going to happen if he stuck around any longer. My dad told me that this was the hardest part he ever had to do in his life, but he did it. He ran from the thickest forest of Cambodia to make his way to Thailand. At the halfway mark between Cambodia and Thailand, a few monks spotted my dad and asked him where he was going by himself at this time of night. My dad, who understood Thai, told them about his situation, so they decided to walk with my dad where they would feed him and take him in. As you can imagine, the forest is pretty thick and the sound of gunfire is echoing throughout. The monks would stop at times to pray because dead bodies would be found, and my father would freak out by the sight of it, just like any kid would. As moments seemed like forever, the sun barely breaking through, my father heard a faint female voice in this pitch-black forest. He looked up at the monks and noticed they started to chant and pray because they heard it too. My father decided to stand in between the monks if anything happened. This is what my father had a hard time explaining to us. As the monks chanted and prayed, they noticed that there was movements coming above them. The trees started to shake, and my father told me he saw what he believed was a lady with super long hair, like the Grudge-looking lady. The monks decided to continue chanting, and they told my dad not to look at her or pay any attention to her. They told him to chant and pray with them, so he did as so, and they started to chant louder and louder, and the trees around them started to shake. At this moment, the monks told my dad to make a dash for it because the border of Thailand was just up ahead. As he was running the entire time, he said that something was chasing him. He felt like something was nearly at his back but was far out of reach. He numbed out the pain from his feet and continued running. It felt like an eternity, but he eventually spotted some sunlight and pushed through the last few steps out of the forest. Whatever that was chasing him stopped, and my father decided to turn around. He spotted the monks coming out, and he said that they looked like they were fighting someone or something. My dad asked the monks if they saw what he saw. They said yes, and they thought having him run ahead would keep whatever it was away. But they said once my dad took off running, that thing was chasing him the entire time. This was one of the few stories that my father told me that pushed me from being a skeptic to somewhat a believer. My friends and I had been backpacking through Asia for a couple of months before moving back to the States. Towards the end of our trip, we stopped at Phuket, Thailand, and checked into an Airbnb. I was dead asleep when I woke up to my friend clutching my arm tightly, with a look of pure terror on her face. As I looked at her, completely confused as to why she was terrified, she said, "Do you see it?" and shakily pointed to the corner of the room, on her side of the bed. I looked up and saw this large figure moving and expanding and collapsing itself at the same time. It felt like as if the energy was being sucked from the room. It appeared to have a mixture of black and glowing metallic red. It did not resemble a human at all. My brain really couldn't even fully comprehend what I was seeing, so naturally I responded to my friend by shakily pointing to the corner as well and responding, "Yeah, it's growing." The really weird part is that the last thing I remember was pointing, feeling scared, and then I woke up in the morning. I fell asleep, but it's more like I just blacked out. The next day, we didn't even discuss it. We said that it was strange and moved on. Recently, years later, we compared notes about what we had seen and experienced. Our notes aligned in every way. What we saw, passing out, how we felt. It's one of the strangest things that has ever happened to me, and I could never really think of an explanation as to what we experienced. I got a text from a blocked number titled, "A Gift from My Neighbor." It appears to be excerpts from a religious woman's diary. I thought the site would be the best place to post it. I found the photo online, and it sort of matched the woman's description. These ghost amulet dolls come from Thailand and are the results of taking the ashes and oils of a dead infant or fetus. I won't go into specifics, but you can visit the site posted under my sources. Entry 23. Today after church, during fellowship, a conversation with Adam, my neighbor, escalated into a strange conversation about ghosts. I told him to bring it up to the preacher as I wasn't familiar or interested with the paranormal. I did notice he had slurred speech and dark circles under his eyes, apparently from many restless nights. That's when he snapped at me. "I thought I could at least trust my own damn neighbor. You're such a hypocrite. What did our Lord say? Oh yeah, love thy neighbor. That means you at least hear a guy out." It was about that time that Deacon Peter and Pastor Michael ushered him and myself from the banquet hall, telling us that talk of ghosts was disturbing the flock. Needless to say, I was startled by this outburst and offended that my own pastor would assume I had instigated such a blasphemous conversation. Entry 24. Adam, I suppose, has not forgotten about yesterday. He was staring at my house for 2 hours from his window last night and tonight as well. I suppose that I should ask him what's on his mind someday. Entry 25. Something extremely strange happened today. So strange, in fact, that I feel the need to recount most of what has transpired for future reference. I came home from work and found an odd and admittedly freaky-looking doll thing on my doorstep. Upon picking it up, I noticed it was greasy and had a pungent odor of burnt hair about it. What appeared to be human hair was protruding from what looked like its head. My first impression was that it was a voodoo doll. As I picked it up, I sensed someone or something watching me. As I looked around, I caught a glimpse of the curtain in the window of my neighbor's house moving, the same window he was staring out every night since our quarrel at the church. As a Christian, I'm not concerned with the paranormal. I know that Jesus is on my side, and that's all the paranormal I need in my life. I couldn't let this man disrupt the peace of my home with his intruding gaze and these newly developing mystical shenanigans. I took the doll to his house and rang the doorbell. After waiting what seemed like forever, he answered with a cold smile. "Well, howdy, neighbor. I see you got my message," he said boisterously. I was curious. "And just what message is that?" He had a blank look on his sunken face. "If God loves me so much, why won't he answer my prayers?" I responded with disdain. Why was he evading the main issue at hand? I responded with, "What prayers will the Lord not provide for with an answer or sign?" His false grin disappeared. "That's just the thing. I have too many answers. Come on inside while I explain." I was cautious at first, noting how unkempt his house seemed and how disgusting the interior of his house must be. After I crossed the threshold and my eyes adjusted to the darker ambience, I noticed a sparsely decorated and extremely clean living room with a leather reclining chair by a psychologist's hypnosis sofa. The only other furnishing I noticed was a display case filled with what I assumed was memorabilia from his service days. I paused in front of the display and noticed that among the medals and pictures, there was an empty box. I leaned in to inspect it, and upon closer inspection, I noticed a shipping label with his address as the return and delivery address. He had a seat in the leather recliner, leaving me in the hypnosis subject's sofa. I sat upright so as not to be susceptible to anything suspicious. "I saw you noticed my display case," he said. "Yes, I didn't know you were so decorated." He smiled and said, "All that 4 tours of Nam did for me was add weight to my chest, darling." I was wondering why he had been staring at my home and presented my issue delicately. "I noticed you staring at my home from your window last night. Is there something that interests you?" He wasn't affected by my question in the least. Nothing interesting. Just the same night every night." I couldn't help but ignore his blatant indifference to my concerns, but out of politeness I changed the topic. I then asked him what he meant by saying he had too many answers. He was obviously brewing something behind his baggy, listless eyes. What I meant is that when I pray for all the answers to all I've done, all the judgments to just leave me alone, they never do. I'm sick of them tearing away at me, and there's not much left to tear at. The only thing that keeps me going is that the fate I face if I just end it is way worse than sleep deprivation. I thought maybe you might be someone that could help a neighbor out, like a good Christian." "How can I help?" I asked, wondering how I might help a depressed veteran struggling with suicidal thoughts. "You're serious?" he asked with a look of bewilderment. "Yeah, just tell me what I can do to help you sleep at night, and please remember that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and therefore a sin." I was admittedly skeptical about how effective any help I could give would be to someone with a mental disorder. "Well, all right, sister. You know that doll you found on your doorstep?" "Yeah, well, if you could take it off my hands, I might actually get some shut-eye and not spend my every waking second contemplating giving up on everything. Anything, dear. I wondered how taking this freaky thing could possibly help him get some sleep, but I'm sure it's a small price to pay for a contented life. I agreed to take the thing off his hands, and I saw a sudden glimmer of life in his eyes. He hastily fished a pen out of his pocket and wrote something on the box. My address. He handed the box to me, ushered me out of his house, and slammed the door. I had not noticed how late it had become while I was talking with him. 3 hours passed by in what seemed like 30 minutes. As I walked home, I noticed the box in which I put the doll in began to get ice cold. Every step I took was arduous, and every breath was exhausting. Sensing something was wrong, I decided to knock on Adam's door to ask more about the box. I struggled to knock on the door, and as I was about to yell for him, I heard a muffled gunshot come from inside. I opened the door as quickly as I could. The once clean interior was a mess of dust, the floorboards rickety, there was no furniture, and on one of the floor, ceiling, and one of the walls was a brownish red stain. No one had inhabited this home in years. Startled, I resisted the overwhelming urge to run and investigate. As I was scanning the room, I stepped through a floorboard. I struggled to pull myself out, but as my leg pulled from the crevice, I saw a glimmer of something metallic under the floorboard. I picked out of the dark what appeared to be military dog tags, and on one of the plates I read the name Adam Romberg. I don't know if I was guided by God or my neighbor's ghost, but everything slowed down as I quickly processed what had transpired. I had begun to second-guess everything I had been taught by the church. I crawled from the hole, abandoning the box, and struggled to get home. I feel like what happened was possibly a miracle, and I may have been sent by God to set a weary soul free. When I got to my doorstep, I noticed something that froze the blood in my veins. The box I thought I had abandoned at my neighbor's was sitting on my stoop. I am a good Christian woman, and whatever this madness is that I have been subjected to, I surely didn't deserve. The agents of Satan must be put to an end. I must cleanse this doll of its evil. After rubbing blessed oil on the doll and box, I will sleep easily knowing I have thwarted Satan. Entry 26. I am stuck here in bed, the very image of sloth. The whispering and scratching kept me up all night. Tubman can't get in. I can only hear him scratching at the windows and the door, meowing incessantly. All attempts to reach out to my preacher and neighbors are silenced. There's no phone service at my home. Instead of a dial tone, I hear blood-curdling screams and maniacal laughter. What was once my home has become my prison, and I suspect this satanic little doll is the warden holding me. I'm sure the Lord will embrace me and put this all to an end. This frail human body will die of thirst before my spirit is broken. Entry 27. Why won't it leave my bedside? Entry equals. No. Now. Here. Where? And that was it. That was the story, guys. It was okay, I guess. Thanks